Hello and welcome back to the Wasteland, everybody. Welcome back to Fallout, where today we're going to be going kind of over the history of a perk slash trait that's been in the Fallout games since the beginning. We're going to be talking about Bloody Mess in this video, which, funny enough, Bloody Mess is definitely one of the perks that can get your video demonetized. So we might not actually be showing the effects of Bloody Mess all that much in this video. Create a mental image in your head of what it might be like for people to explode in any of the Fallout games, because Bloody Mess actually goes back to the very first Fallout game, where in Fallout 1, 2, and Tactics, Bloody Mess was not actually a perk, it was a trait that you could have. And funny enough, it was one of the few traits that actually didn't really do all that much, because most traits generally come with a big plus and a big minus, where you could have something like Small Frame in the older games as well as in New Vegas that would give you +1 agility, so that's +1 special stat, which is really good. And plussing to special stats was actually kind of a big deal in the earlier games. Your special stat spread did matter quite a bit, but it came with the downside of -25 carry weight, except for in the case of Tactics where it was -50 carry weight, and in New Vegas where it gave you easily broken bones. Bloody Mess just made it so you had more violent animations whenever you killed anything. And at least in Fallout 1, it did actually change the ending, which was funny. That was the only quote-unquote penalty that it did have. So you didn't really get a major bonus or minus from taking Bloody Mess. In Fallout 2, this wouldn't change the ending. Same thing goes with Fallout Tactics. Those endings would be dependent on what your choices were throughout the game, more so than you just taking this trait at the start of the game. The other weird thing about Bloody Mess is that even though it gives you more bloody animations in the game, there's actually a setting in the options for all of the early Fallout games to determine how much gore you would like to see. They also had like a profanity filter, and Fallout 2 also had more of a suggestion filter, because Fallout 2 did quite a lot of adult things compared to a lot of the other games throughout the series. So you could already kind of mess with this and just crank the gore dial to max, which was kind of funny. On this dial, you could actually have no blood and gore whatsoever. So whenever you killed anything, it just fell over. There was no blood. It didn't really die. It was basically like it fainted in Pokemon or something. Then you add the minimal. This made it so that enemies, again, basically just fell over and died a lot of the time. Sometimes you'd have a little bit of blood then, just whenever you shot an enemy, just as a visual indicator. And sometimes there'd be a pool of blood below them. You add the normal amount of blood and gore, which was what you would kind of expect from Fallout. Sometimes things could kind of explode depending on what you shot them with or threw at them, whatever it might be. If it's a hand grenade and they blow up, it might result in more of a fantastic explosion. And then you add the maximum amount of blood and gore, which could still result in the same regular death animations of something just falling over and dying, but you usually did get a whole lot more of things just getting ripped apart and exploded, which is basically the same thing Bloody Mess did. I don't actually know if there was any difference between taking Bloody Mess and cranking the gore dial all the way to full. I think if you just took Bloody Mess on the regular difficulty, or on the regular setting for the blood and gore not regular difficulty, it would sometimes cause them to explode like it does on the maximum gore setting. So in Fallout 1, 2, and Tactics, this trait honestly doesn't matter all that much. You don't need to take it with any of your characters. Funny enough though, in Tactics, you can actually get the Pit Boy, the Vault Boy from Fallout, to join your team if you go to his unique encounter, which can be found on a map. I think it's actually in the same place every time you go there, which is cool. And you can recruit him so long as you have an extra spot. He kind of bugged out 2 of the times I tried this, so I had to go back and try to recruit him again. But his one and only trait is actually Bloody Mess, funny enough. Again, not that it matters so much for Tactics, but it is kind of funny that the Pip-Boy has this. Into the later games of Fallout 3 and New Vegas, this would change from a trait into a perk. Traits didn't really appear in Fallout 3. They did in New Vegas, but Bloody Mess was not one of them. In both Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, this would turn into a level 6 perk that didn't have any requirements to it other than you just getting to level 6. And this one still gave you the same violent animations as before, which could be a little bit better in the new 3D games, because then enemies could be exploded and you could potentially find body parts, especially if they were in a high up area and you killed them, so you could potentially find those body parts a little bit easier. The only problem with this is if you killed multiple enemies of the same type, and all of their body parts kind of went together, which would make it a little bit more difficult to actually loot bodies. Although if you were just taking everything, it would at least say that that enemy was empty, so you wouldn't have to worry about looting them. On top of that, it actually gave you an extra bonus, which was 5% more damage with every weapon. Now, 5% more damage in Fallout 3 and New Vegas is not such a huge deal. It's kind of a nice bonus, and for certain weapons, this could be a realistically pretty high amount of damage. 5% more damage on the Fat Man is a lot of damage. For a lot of other weapons, it wouldn't really be that impactful, especially for lower damaging weapons. Getting 5% more damage on a weapon that does 10 or 20 damage is still nice, but it's not a huge buff to the weapon, meaning that it was a decent perk overall. In Fallout 4, it would change once again, and now this would actually be associated with luck. You had to have at least level 3 luck in order to get Bloody Mess, so it was pretty early on. You could get this perk a total of 4 times. The first rank of this would give you the same bonuses that it did in Fallout 3 and New Vegas, 5% more damage and more gory explosions overall, which is still pretty decent, pretty much the same as it was in the previous games. You could get it once again at level 9, which now made it so that you did 10% more damage with everything, which is a pretty sizable buff. 10% more damage for any build is pretty nice. The third rank of it would take quite a bit longer to get at level 31, which would give you 15% more damage to everything, which is nice. And then the final rank of it was at level 47, and this was probably the most interesting that Bloody Mess got, where when an enemy explode, a nearby enemy could actually suffer the same fate exploding and killing them, which made it so if you killed some low-level enemy and there was a high-level enemy next to it, it might just die outright, which is pretty useful, especially if that enemy is something really scary in Fallout 4. By the time you're getting to 47, you could be running into some pretty strong, unique variants of different creatures throughout the wasteland, so this one actually could be pretty good. Funny enough, this one could actually trigger on yourself too, because if there was no enemies nearby and you killed something, then the game just counted as it triggering to the nearest living creature, which was you. It just defaulted to you even if you had companions. This wouldn't do any damage to you though, but if you've ever maxed out this skill or just been maxing out a bunch of skills and wondering why every once in a while when you kill an enemy your person kind of shakes, the screen shakes, and your person lets out a grunting noise, it's probably because you have Bloody Mess maxed out. So Bloody Mess really hasn't changed very much over the history of Fallout. It's kind of always been the same sort of trait slash perk. It's just gotten slightly better over time. And I would be really surprised if we don't end up getting this in later Fallout installments too, because it's kind of been a staple in every single one of them. And aside from it just making really gory splattering things, it's become actually a pretty decent trait overall. Nothing amazing. This has never been like a top tier perk or a top tier trait in any of the games, but it's never been terrible to have either. It's always been like right in the middle, okay enough. So that's the history of Bloody Mess. Tell me your thoughts on this. Thank you guys so very much for watching this video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody!